on the commissioners. For the Monday, February 12th, 2024 meeting of the Bethlehem Township Planning Board, 7:34 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with section 3D of chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975. As the sunshine act. Roll call, please.
Paul Merrill,
Here.
Jose Reyes,
Here.
Judy Nelson. Here. Grace Ann Kelly. Here. Ryan Messinger,
Here.
Jose Maderos,
Here.
Philip Bellin. Brad Nelson,
Here.
Ken Shalay,
Here.
Jeff Coletti,
Here.
Steve DiLorenzo, Daniel McDonald.
Here.
Tara Kaczynski. Here.
Please rise to the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to open the public for general public comment on agenda items.
Motion open in public.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Suzanne?
Yeah, I can't comment on public, on the agenda items because we didn't get it online. I apologize, it couldn't come in, so just saying.
I don't know why that was a,
Okay.
disconnect somehow. I apologize.
That's okay. So can you just kind of go over briefly what is on the agenda?
We're gonna have master plan discussion of the draft document. We're gonna have our bylaw discussion and vote. Minutes. And we'll have an executive session. At the end, for pending litigation.
Oh, okay, so I do have a comment for the master plan then.
Okay?
So, and I could be wrong, the copy that Jose Reyes gave us for the Environmental Commission, the draft, it didn't have what's gonna be proposed in it. So do you guys have those sections with updates on that?
So after the discussion, I believe tonight, we'll be incorporating, some of those talking points onto a pretty much a final document. Our planner was unable to make tonight's meeting. She's on vacation, I believe. So what was the timeline for February 26th? We will be posting it publicly, Suzanne.
So
Will be
you know that I'm on the Environmental Commission, Jose Reyes will get a copy for the Environmental Commission to review with those updates.
At this point, what I gave you is the same thing I have. No different.
Right, but but those sections is empty.
The A through E.
Well, I don't remember the section numbers, but the ones that talk about what you're proposing in this re-exam period.
So
CP&E.
Yeah, CP&E.
That's what we're talking about, that's what we're discussing tonight.
So, yeah, so basically. Part C, D, and E will be discussed tonight. Those changes will then be incorporated or concerned to be incorporated into the final. Document that will then be. Reviewed and posted publicly on probably the 29th of February.
So sections D, E, I have it in front of me now, D, E, and F, which are the recommendations for this re-exam period, that's not going to be discussed yet. Is that what you're saying?
No, so Suzanne, what's happening is tonight, we're gonna discuss the draft that you're looking at. At the next meeting, the planner will be here. And we'll review the final changes and the board will decide if that document is in sufficient form to post on the website. If that does happen and the board votes to do that, that'll happen around February 29th. And then after that, we'll have a public comment period and we'll make announcements as to when everything else is gonna happen. But right now, we're still in the discussion phase. And once it has been at a point where the board feels comfortable agreeing to post it, then that will happen, probably somewhere after the meeting of February 26th.
Okay, it just is confusing how you're gonna, and I think Jose Maderos brought this up the last time, is you're reviewing things that are in the document that were already in prior reexamination reports, which is historic information, but D, E, and F are the recommended changes, which is the kind of the guts of this period's reexamination report. So I'm just kind of confused at what you guys, I understand literally what you're reviewing and the public's going to review, but if sections D, E, and F basically are empty,
That's what
then,
we have to fill in. So A, B, and C are easy because that was our last reexamination.
right,
And that's just repeating what the history was. So that's just to bring us the whole board up to speed as to what we had talked about back in 2012 and 2014.
right.
So now this is, like you said, section D, E, and F are the last, the sections now that we filled in. You know, understanding that some of the things that were recommended had been done, some of them hadn't been done. So now we have to determine what has to be done, what we don't want to do anyway, things like that.
It's just very confusing to review a draft of something that Jose Reyes gave us as part of the environmental commission, not even just the general public yet, and yet the real guts of things, section D, E, and F are empty.
Right, because we haven't done anything yet on it. That's what what we have here is just the body of the document so that we can now start filling in the blanks. That's
Well,
what this meeting is about.
okay, so in other words, the next copy that Jose Reyes gives us for the environmental commission will have something in section D, E, and F.
Once we all determine that that's what we want to do, yeah.
Well, what do you mean? What do you want to do? You have to put something there. You can say, we won't do anything, but you still have to say something,
Yeah, okay.
right?
But-
Even if you're not going to make any other changes, let's say your recommendation for, as an example, section F regarding electric vehicle infrastructure, if you're not going to do anything with that, which is fine, then you just have to state that in section F then, as an example.
Right, okay. But, you know, as an example, that has actually already been done. We were
I
invested
don't see
for-
anything in section F except,
Right, because it
really
hasn't,
doesn't say much.
Suzanne, you're looking at a draft.
No, I
Once we have
understand. I
a
understand
final
that,
draft,
it was just those
then it
particular
will make
sections.
more sense.
I understand I'm looking at a draft. I 100% get that. But it's just odd that the sections that have the least in it are the ones that are kind of the most important.
I think the key is you have no less information than we do. What you have in front of you is exactly what I have in front of me as mayor, as planning board member, and nothing further than what's in this document has been done.
That's what
But
we're
it
working
sounds
on.
like then a lot more has to be done.
yeah.
Yes, that's what we're gonna do tonight.
That was
This
my
is the first
question, and
meeting.
you answered my question. Thank you.
This is the first meeting that we're discussing this for the new year, so.
All the other meetings that have been held about this were only held by the subcommittee. The subcommittee, we gave our report on what we came up with. And now it's for the entire board to discuss and determine what's gonna happen.
Okay,
I gave my comment from the public, but
okay. Thank you. Any other public comments about agenda items?
Andrew Laffey, 3 Farrow Lane. I just wanted to ask Ms. Kaczynski, based on the dates that were just provided, when does the planning board project that the Highlands Council will receive a finalized version of this master plan?
I don't know that we have that estimated date yet. We have a lot of other milestones to take care of. Yeah, the public comment will be anticipated. This is our goal. It may change depending on what happens at the other meetings, but right now, the public comment date is anticipated for March 25th. So after that, presumably that would be when the next step would happen. The planner could be here and give you maybe a better time frame, but that's the estimated public comment date.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, need a motion to close the public?
Make that motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Okay. All right, with that. Let's discuss the master plan. The original desire was to have all planner here tonight. That's not part of the grant. We talked to have it coming tonight, but I thought it would be a little bit more productive to have her here, but of course, that's too big a portion. So, for tonight, let's go through this. Monica sent out an email to have some sort of discussion points if you have questions or concerns. Just making something that kind of finalized. Work into what the master plan is. So. That the subcommittee. Whoever would like to take lead on it. For that discussion.
Whatever, yeah, be back there. So really, we've already dealt with, like we said, sections A, B, and C, which are just what we had, the assumptions that we made, in our 2012 and 2014, report. And we did act on quite a few of the recommendations that we made. So we should probably start out by kind of filling those in. I think that we have some of them in there, but. The
52 is picture.
Thank you.
Mr. Madera, can you just state who's on the subcommittee, just so.
On the subcommittee was Jose Reyes, Jeff Coletti, Ryan Messinger, and myself. So as you see, these are the recommended changes, and some of these are just placeholders, and some of them are things that we should have to discuss. So the following additional changes are recommended to the township master plan. So this is actually just coming from the planner, so, this is what we have to decide what actually has to be in here. So the township should participate in the state agricultural, the SADC municipal planning incentive grant program and prepare an updated farmland preservation plan. So that's certainly something I believe we should do. I don't know how everybody else feels. And so the one thing is that we would need to prepare a comprehensive farmland preservation plan. Do we know if we have that in place right now?
For those on the question ready, I don't know available planner or any I have not seen one, but I know we have an open space, but I don't know if we have a farmland.
Yeah, I think we set up the open space one
I don't think we have.
because we were trying to preserve a couple of properties. And that was an issue. So that's certainly, one of the first things we have to do. And then the township committee has to put funds forward to prepare that plan.
And that has to be in the master plan, but if I remember correctly, you don't put target properties or anything else in
No.
there.
No,
because of
Yeah.
the possibility of it.
The target properties, if were to put target properties on there, the property owners would be immediately jack up their prices. So it's meant to be individually, it's supposed to be a town, plan. And then,
That's true, but the farmland preservation is still limited by appraisals, so,
yeah, that's true, yeah,
so there's protection there, but yeah, I think it would just be more of a strategy than.
right.
I would be.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that, you know, when some certain properties come available, you know, that's usually when we try to target them. So, you know, if a property that's, you know, listed as as the number 3 property, you know, are we gonna get something back from property number 1 who says, hey, you know, I'm supposed to be priority over that other property? So it just kind of makes it a little bit easier to deal with the plan. So the next issue would be to prepare land use element, a land use plan for the Route 173 corridor to evaluate appropriate uses that will foster economic development while remaining sensitive to natural resources and the township's rural character. So I think that that's certainly.
The planner's working on this, like, so it'll be presented to us as a draft. Hopefully by the next time she's able to join us, because this was funded already by the county and Highland, so it's about $30,000 spend, 15 from the county, 15 from Highlands, and I believe the planner been working on this in conjunction with the master plan. Doing the research at the same time for recommendations.
Right.
Yeah, I think it'd probably be pretty similar to what we're seeing here, but it's a separate document, recommendations.
Right.
I've got a quick question, and so from a procedural standpoint, we assume we like all these ideas and so we want to, you know, create a comprehensive farmland plan, land use for Route 73. How does that tie in with the timing of our master plan review? Like, are these things?
Well, this is,
No, but the creation of those documents, right?
well,
So does that fall, are they technically part of the master plan, or just something we're saying we are going to do?
Yeah.
And we can close out the master plan and tackle those
right.
things
So
we agree to at a later date.
So just like we did in section A, B, and C, we set out deficiencies and targets of things that we'd like to do.
Okay.
And then we put that in our next evaluations, A, B, and C. And, you know, so everything that we go through here are recommendations that we think this should, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
We're actually amending the master plan. This is just a re-exam report about the plan as it currently exists.
Right.
And then the
And
plan
we'll
is
say, this is what we want to do, and if it takes us 2 years to do something, so
Doesn't
be it,
matter.
but
Yeah, I mean, some things we might say, this really has to happen right away. And, you know,
But it doesn't.
but it doesn't have to, it doesn't hold
Completion
up
of the
this.
review.
Exactly. Exactly.
What you're gonna see in here is also stuff that's been recommended that we didn't do.
Right. I just couldn't remember, I haven't been on a review yet, so I couldn't remember the timing of, okay.
It was a popular theme when we went through this, to recognize that a lot of the things that we want to do, they take the resources of money and resources of volunteers.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
We don't have. Okay.
Okay, so the next one is the township should prepare the climate hazard vulnerability assessment, which will form the basis of zoning ordinance revisions that will allow Bethlehem Township to become a more resilient community and better prepared for hazards such as those identified in the Hunterdon County Hazard Mitigation Plan, which includes hurricanes, nor'easters, and severe storm. So that somewhat falls into the tier A to tier B
I was gonna say that.
stuff,
A
yeah.
lot of what would be in there is already in second plan or has
Right.
already been.
Or we'll come down, with Pike, I would imagine. That's
Yeah, I
gonna
mean,
be dictated to us.
Yeah, that's just.
I would leave it in there as a goal, but I think we'll just accomplish it in the natural state.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's, I mean, we have an emergency plan.
We do, and actually the county, it says in identified Hunter County Hazard Mitigation Plan. We're part of that mitigation plan already.
Right.
Obviously, it allowed smaller towns to work with the county, so we've already adopted and approved to be part of it, and so it does exist. So that portion exists. I think it's just some of the vulnerability assessment, but again, a lot of that's forced through stormwaters, like the DEP was out here a year and a half ago with, the new inland flood regulations and went through the town and identified a couple areas, and then they sent a letter asking us, to put in some different plans. Part of that was, I think, the, one ordinance that we approved last time with the 500 year, we had a discussion of 100 or 500.
Right.
That was part of that inland flood, so these are things we're being asked to do on a regular basis with DEP. Anyway, there's nothing in particular that we would do individually. I think, the other thing that we wanted to document is, say, Deputy Mayor Nelson and I sat with the engineer talking about future road projects and how do we incorporate for storm systems going forward. And so that might be slightly outside of it, but it could be something we can document, include in there.
Okay. All right, so next item is, the municipality should continue to carefully monitor the development.
We missed
The township should prepare an updated ERI that establishes the baseline existing conditions of the township's natural resources. The ERI should incorporate older data, making be compared to the most up-to-date information. Sorry. Determine whether the resources are being improved or worsened. Once the baseline data is established, the township should review the data to develop recommendations to mitigate those impacts. So this was something that I was kind of concerned about when we changed the animal ordinance. Because we didn't do a baseline. We didn't have baselines as to, where our streams were as far as fecal coliforms and phosphates go. So, I mean, certainly that's something we should strive to do now.
Well, there is stream monitoring.
Right.
Brad and Judy and I have a property where they share a stream, and they do come up and they routinely,
Right.
And what was your word?
they,
Yeah, but that has to be done actually by our environmental commission.
I'm saying that it was just done this past
They've
year.
been doing it for salt.
Yeah.
We started with salt.
Salt is one of them, but they've also, as they monitor for the results of the storm runoff from,
So,
yeah.
Hmm.
They've been checking the overall health of that stream.
yeah,
Because we have volunteers in various streams, environmental commissioners, or
Yeah.
testing these.
I think the key.
Yes, I know they've been testing for nitrates too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like you say,
I'm gonna charge a beach access for we both.
yeah, maybe we put together a schedule of things that are gonna have to be tested for. And then the township can create some sort of budget for the environmental commission for the, I say tools, tests, whatever you need. To get that done and then have volunteers actually doing the collections. So that could be half part of this, ERI.
But we have the volunteers at the moment, so
I mean,
And we have a
we
budget.
have 5 people that are willing to go out there and do that.
We did have, the last time we did our ERI, we had hired Clark. No, it was,
Chris and,
Princeton Hyder, yeah.
Unfortunately, this time, we didn't get any grant money. We thought we had grant money as part of this, but it's all been spent on this portion of the plan. None was given to
Yeah,
environmental.
that time the Highlands gave us modules, and they didn't do that, so this is just for the master plan portion, and then there was an ERI, because they're still, I would say, early in the Highlands phase, so they're trying to help us with compliance, so we do have a, I would say baseline, but there is an ERI for the last one. And then we can figure out, whether that's through the environmental commission with our administrator, or if we do have to pay for it, we'll put it in the budget.
Yeah. Hey, is that something we could ask, Islands, is good?
it would make sense considering Highlands is all about
Yeah.
certain groundwater. And, for the state, I don't see why we can't ask for some sort of
Well, just see if there's some kind of a grant.
funding that can,
And they weren't large, I mean, the $1,000 have changed, but, back then those modules were between $4,000 and $8,000, so you can kind of shift around, so they weren't large
Right.
grants.
Yeah, I don't know how much.
Township might supplement.
I mean, certainly it's something that we want to know how our water's doing, and,
But you're not talking about counting like fish and stuff, like just the.
No, I mean, typically it's,
Well, the DEP was actually, that's part of the
Yes.
monitor.
That's what they did. They
Yeah.
actually shocked that part of the stream and it counted all fish in it.
but that was actually, I think that the monitoring your stream was part of
Mitigation.
the mitigation for when all that soap stuff washed into
I
the.
think they've been doing statewide, it's even over the Red
That's what they-
Valley Grant Authority for the South Branch, and they would come, that's why I said the water authority, not the waters.
We might be more of a priority for that, but they, when I spoke to them, they said it was part of a larger initiative.
So, I mean, that's one, I guess that this one's kind of more important, to actually get in to the master plan. So I don't know, what would we do? Just make a recommendation that we do an ERI as soon as possible, or?
Look, I mean, this is already in here, so it's our want list anyway,
Right.
so.
But I mean, isn't an ERI required as part of the reexamination?
Yeah, but it's never gonna be done at this time frame, no matter what,
Right,
no matter.
right,
So we would have to use what our existing one is
yeah,
for this report. One of the things that I would like to happen is there tends to always be a rush when it comes to master plan components, and we spend the time on it right now. And then we kind of forget about it for 10 years, 8 years, 10 years, and we really don't go over that master plan. And it'd be nice if maybe that's something that we do in reorg every year, where we start to go over some of these rules and at least hit a couple of them a year of what we're doing. And, where there's actions that need to be done, we are routinely doing them so that in 10 years, whether it's us or the next generation of people, we can look back and say, well, that series of tasks was done and completed.
yeah, the recommendation.
And
I remember when, like, the first time we needed to comply with Highlands regulations, we had a spreadsheet with like progress to goals, and then they were funded, so each like module, there were like 12 modules, and 8 of them were funded, and we tracked steps and funding for each one to accomplish them, to reach Highlands conformance initially. I think Jose, you probably remember that as well. And so this way it was documented, it was always in the land use or the administrator's office. And so we should, once this is adopted, create something similar and identify funding sources as we need. I think we're the perfect person to create it.
Yeah, and in the last master plan, the ERI was about 6 months behind.
Right, yeah. But again, so that one was actually a change in our master plan, because we made that master plan then conform to the Highlands. That was the first master plan that we did, where we adopted all the Highland rules. We became conforming to the Highlands Act. So all that had to be done then for that. So, we don't know whether or not we're gonna actually make any changes to the master plan this time. But that's the one question that I have for the planner is, by the time we're done with this, do we have to be in process of getting the ERI updated? Or is that not a requirement of the reevaluation? Okay. So next
Excuse me for 1 second. So the question that you have for that, I'm trying to collect those so that I can email them to her. So when we complete this master plan,
right.
can we do it with the ERI we have? Or do we have to,
Well,
tell me the phrasing, I'm sorry.
so assuming we make any changes to the master plan, do we have to have a new ERI also for that master plan? But this is just reevaluating it, whether or not we're going to make any changes. If we actually make changes, then we are actually changing the master plan. So that's something that, which I would imagine that we are going to find some things that we want to change. So at that point, do we have to have the ERI moving?
And I heard that somebody wanted a schedule of the tests needed. is that just going in the wish list, or is that a task that I should be putting on it to do for somebody?
That would be the environmental commission.
Yeah, this is an environmental commission.
The ERI, the environment.
And the other thing is that there was a mention of looking into grants. Who am I giving that to, or is that again a wish item?
That's gonna be, again, that's grant funding for water testing, so that would be the environmental commission.
Well, but the environmental.
but-
doesn't-
No, but looking at-
The committee can approach them.
Yeah.
Right there.
I'm just thinking that if we want things done, if I start putting people to do with somebody responsible, we might have a chance of seeing some of
Yeah,
that.
so the Highlands won't talk to just anybody,
I didn't think so,
so that's why we have
I got
two
the
liaisons to the Highlands. That's
but
what,
I got it started.
that's when I say we have to ask the Highlands.
Fine.
So, okay, where are we? So the municipality should continue to carefully monitor the developments in affordable housing regulation, Supreme Court decisions and new legislation, and be prepared to comply with the resulting new rule. So right now, we are in conformance, only because we have a durational adjustment.
So, this is something we do ongoing, so you can leave it in there as ongoing, so, we have a duration adjustment for round 3, round 4 starts in 2025, so this is the last year. The Assembly and the Senate, have fast-tracked this for a variety of reasons that, are difficult for municipalities, so actually today, the, current affordable housing, bill in the Assembly, A4, it's online, so if you're gonna look it up, it's A4. Passed in the Assembly by a vote of 51 to 28. It'll be going to the Senate, I believe on Monday, next week, or, and that will, it's going to their Budget Appropriations Committee, so not for a vote, but still in committee, and that's S50. If you want to take a look at that, I disagree with a lot of this, I will say, I was talking to the president of the Conference of Mayors, and we have representations working closely with our legislatures, along with the League of Municipalities, and we've made a lot of progress, but I still am not as happy as, I would like to see municipalities involved more in the discussion, especially the way that this has been fast tracked so quickly with the state legislature. I have been invited to sit on New Jersey Future, their Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and they're meeting in Princeton next Thursday. I think the Senate does listen, but again, based on the participants, I think that a lot of the decisions and conversations, even there, will align with what bills are out there. What's in there now, they could open up the document, but last I looked, Bethlehem Township would have an obligation of another 172 units of affordable in the next round, which however, they're then addressed through future durational adjustments or we don't know yet, but that's what the number that's in the bill. So you can look at the A4, that's 50, both online. You can just Google New Jersey, Senate, that's 50. They've got 70-page documents.
And essentially what it does is it creates a new methodology for coming up with this number. And across the board, based upon research and brief analysis, the number that, it's increasing approximately 10% from the number that you would currently using the current methodology to the new methodology from the proposed bill. And in addition to that, there's certain milestones and certain things you're gonna have to do, and if the timetables stay as they are, I don't know if, they're gonna change along the way, it's quite possible. But you're gonna have to take final action on a number of different things by January next year. And we don't even have a bill yet that's in final form. So I would presume that if, once that bill gets in final form, that end date's gonna change. But it may not.
Yeah.
And just the way everything's going.
This is exactly what happened last time.
Correct.
I mean, last time.
And then you're gonna have litigation, and then we're gonna hold it all up, and it's just gonna be another,
Right.
Yeah,
Nightmare.
this eliminates COA finally, so
Correct.
affordable housing is gone.
Well, it's already gone, but it's.
It existed, it just wasn't functioning, so it's
Right.
officially gone. There's $16 million in funding, which is nothing for 545 municipalities, $16 million.
and 3 people that are gonna make the decisions for North Central itself.
Where it's gonna go, so you still have the courts with a court master, again, we don't want the meeting, but I really, and there's a lot of advocacy for the regional approach. I also do believe, we had a discussion about this, that the impact of this third round that we're in
has not been fully calculated. I don't think the demand is anywhere near what everybody thought it was. I believe that's a strong reason for the backtracking, because this way you can keep building the numbers, and you don't have the evidence yet to say, look, nobody's rented these units, they're not even built yet. And we're being asked to build more, so, it's a tough fight that, yeah, we're not invited to. You know, it's the thing.
Well, it's also, you know, it's cross purposes with the Highlands. You know, the Highlands tells us that we can, you know, we have.
We're fortunate, and I'll say the executive director of Highlands Ben Smalley, I've had conversations with him, he's going to be, in my opinion, a lot more forceful than where we were last time this happened, so we'll have a very strong partner there. But it's still, you know, again, this advisory council that I was invited on, there are about 30 members, 6 from the governor's office, and out of 30 members, there's 3 mayors and 1 council person. And this is the group that's deciding how many of those that we have, and that includes the New Jersey Builders Association, Fair Share. And so that's why I said I'm always disappointed in municipalities not being included in this conversation, and yet then we're the ones that are forced to comply with.
No. No, well, that will be right. All right, the planning board recommends the Bethlehem Township Preserve Lands Map, which was created as part of the Highlands, conformance process, be adopted as an amendment to the Bethlehem Township Master Plan, specifically the Greenway and Open Space Plan and Recreation Plan element. This mapping should be reviewed periodically to reflect any updates. So this is the SRI. And basically, this has to be, we can easily update that just by adding in the properties that we've preserved and, you know, any parks or anything like that that we've established.
I believe this was actually updated as part of the due process.
Yeah.
Last year, and there's probably maybe one property that's not on there.
Right. So next item is seek funding from the New Jersey Board of Utilities, Public Utilities, to prepare a community energy plan, CEP. The CEP helps a community work towards better environment for all residents by using the state's Energy Master Plan, EMP, as a guide to align local efforts. The EMP identifies 7 strategies for rapid reductions in greenhouse gas emissions by targeting efforts to reduce energy use, reduce emissions, increase renewable energy, and more. Many areas of the township see frequent power outages. Increasing the township's renewable energy may reduce reliance on traditional power grid. Well, I don't agree with that last statement.
No.
Because you know, whenever
The
you're.
only way to do that is if we choose to put batteries in.
Right.
You know, and start putting mega packs in and.
Yeah, I mean, if we're doing grid connected systems, then as soon as the grid goes down, your solar panels go down. And that's a safety thing for the linemen so that they don't get electrocuted while they're getting everything back in by backside electricity. So, it really doesn't make much sense to put that in there. You know, can we encourage people to put in battery systems and things like that? Sure, but, you know, they're very expensive. And if people are putting them in place of, you know, I mean, you know, gas generators or like, you know, what do they call them? The generators that kick in automatically. Generacs, thank you. Those Generacs are great, but you know, if you don't have natural gas at your house, or if you have, you know, all you have is propane or you're using liquid fuel, you have to constantly keep that, filled up. Whereas there are battery systems now that will last, you know, a week if you have enough batteries that, you know, that will just automatically kick in, just like the Generac will. And they cost as much as a Generac system does. But once that's out of power, you have no way of.
Again, I mean, there's a few ongoing concerns that this town, you know, traditionally has. Power is definitely one of them, traffic is another one, but on the power component here, you know, it's, you know, we can, some of that wording, again, we would like to see, you know, battery backups for residences and maybe, build it here and stuff like that. We can, I mean, seeking funding, I think we should keep that in there.
Yeah,
The technology is changing, and I think being a little bit more proactive with it, at least wording it in there. Again, not everybody's gonna be able to afford it, but if, any part of the state's going to be able to afford it, it is gonna be this area.
Can you make somebody though?
No, we're not making anybody.
No, what I'm thinking about this though is that basically the public buildings, so the schools should have either a generator or solar panels with a battery pack, so when power does go down,
Typically when you have power down, there's.
they send the kids home.
But I think there's a separate for resiliency there. So the energy master plan was actually adopted by executive order in 2020. And Governor Murphy, so I'm seeing in January, he updated it for 2024. It's not actually dealing with resiliency. It's creating 100% clean energy in New Jersey by 2050. Right. And so can we do that in Bethlehem Township based on wind? So the updated executive order is reliant upon offshore wind development. And as they're saying, an arsenal of policy tools and resources to get to zero or 100% clean energy, zero emissions in New Jersey. So are we able to do that as a rural community without the infrastructure to do that?
So then would the question be then, are we looking at adding solar farms?
well, I mean, that could be one way of addressing it, is to include solar farms in our master
Well,
plan.
we have a separate solar,
Yes, yeah,
right? We have a separate solar ordinance.
which
So-
does allow for solar, for local, plans, and I
Yeah,
think.
we had a few years ago, we had some interest down at the park. And we had a presentation done about, a community solar project. It was a community.
There,
It was, no, I mean, it was, again, if power goes into the grid, it's.
calculation for income limits.
But we didn't, again, they had proposed it to quite a few different towns, and there was limited funding, and although they did a complete plan for us, and they, they did propose it, funding was not secured for us.
So, I mean, I think, I think a lot of people question the ability of New Jersey and other states to be 100% clean energy by 2050. So I would, suggest that we maybe modify this to monitor the ability of compliance of Bethlehem Township and not commit to something that I don't think we can deliver upon. But I think we should be aware of it. I wouldn't eliminate it.
I don't think committing, this isn't necessarily committing, I think it's, at least have the wording in there, so that, individual homeowners can maybe opt in.
Well, I mean, the wording of this is really just to seek funding to prepare a plan. It's not to commit to actually.
I think the reality of this is gonna be, it's gonna be very similar to another compliance stormwater. A lot of the language and the requirements are gonna be not available to us. In similar communities.
I mean, one thing that is coming on the horizon right now, especially, so now, there's new types of solar panels that are coming out that rather than being on an angle, sit straight up and down. And they receive, power from both sides. And so it actually gets a little bit more efficient, but by having the panels also be straight up and down, you can farm in between them. So it is an option for having, for allowing farms to have cogeneration of electricity while they're also raising their crops. They have to be lower crops unless they lift the panels up a little higher, but, so there are things that we can tweak in our ordinances to allow for things like that. But no, that's a wish list that I have. So the following are recommended changes.
I'm sorry.
Just, Paul, you mentioned that this is not about resiliency, but is there a way, is there any part of the state that would help with our result? I mean, we talk about the dead trees falling and knocking our power out, every day. I'm assuming there's no other new,
I think-
like, place to try to find funds that says we can cut some trees, like,
I
take the lines.
I remember seeing another item, somewhere else.
There's another section.
Yeah, that deals with with our resilience.
Okay.
So it's basically, yeah, it's exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, before we move on, Jose, so there was conversation about making this, changing the wording so that it was modified to say something like to monitor viability for Bethlehem Township, but there's also that, it's more of a wish list. How do I go back to, because this is gonna be a final document in 2 weeks, how am I going back to the planner and asking her to revise that particular portion?
So I go back and ask her how, to revise it as we're monitoring and indicate how best Bethlehem Township could comply with the EMP. Because it's not just an environmental master plan, that New Jersey's using it as an economic driver, which again, we don't have the opportunity, so you're using it to create jobs in the wind industry, so, they're looking at the wind farms off the coast, but a lot of those are being built on the other coast, on Delaware. There was a large production facility that had been invested in to provide jobs, and then they're shipping the pieces down and around New Jersey. So I suggest anybody go back and read, you just Google Energy Master Plan, Executive Order 2020, Update 2024. It's really job driven and trying to demonstrate the viability of clean energy to create a clean energy economy. So this master plan is there for it's everything. So it's not, it's conservation, but it's also economic development. We talk about 173, but is that environmental master plan something that we can take part of here? Is there viability for, maybe solar, maybe there's small companies interested in investing in solar. Is somebody gonna start producing windmills here, put them somewhere else? I know we have a resident who helped us out and we were looking at the alternative energy ordinance. I'm not saying that those things don't exist, but I think we need to look at the real viability.
So essentially, to focus on, she says, by using the state's energy master plan as a guide to align local efforts, what could those local efforts be? Is that what you're looking at?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, so-
What would that alignment look like for a town like Bethlehem Township? Because anything that's identified in the governor's plan does not directly exist or easily appear to exist in the near future.
For Bethlehem Township. Yeah.
One of the things that I look at this and was talking to Judy earlier, we're seeking funding to create a community energy plan right now. How to save, outreach program, et cetera, for Bethlehem Township. We're processing, writing a grant proposal to do that right now.
Okay. So one other thing that would be helpful for Bethlehem Township especially is to put in some sort of an ordinance for detection of methane leaks. As we have the gas lines running through town. Methane is probably one of the worst greenhouse gases. So, they don't typically happen on the line. Those lines are, 30,000 PSI, something like that. But at the valves that you see, like on Line Road and a couple other places, monitoring of any leakage there and correction of that is certainly something that we could easily kind of put into an ordinance that we then.
The only issue is pipelines are the federal or permit takes care of that.
Yeah, but I think,
Can't supersede federal.
Yeah, that's true.
regulations.
yeah,
Those are all interstate commerce.
yeah,
So whatever environmental spill laws are, you have to follow. There's not gonna be a lot of that, especially us.
right.
I think if they're opening something up to clean it or install a monitoring device or something like that, it's gonna have a certain amount of discharge.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure that we could ask for some sort of monitoring system in our towns. I mean, they do that in other places. But yeah, I mean, if it's something that could be done, again, this is a wish list. But I mean, if we can do something, you know, that is a good place to reduce emissions, since, you know, we can't really put in a high occupancy vehicle lane going through Bethlehem Township to reduce emissions, but, you know, we do have a ton of high pressure gas lines that are going through the town, and, you know, if we can do something, it's better than nothing.
All right,
So, so the following recommended changes to township land use ordinances. So currently, the neighborhood commercial, general commercial, and highway commercial are combined in section 102-15. The ordinances should be revised to include 3 separate sections and appropriate uses reviewed for each zone district. Each commercial zone should specify the intent and intensity of the uses. An example of each includes neighborhood commercial uses such as small grocery store, general or specialty stores, which furnish convenience goods and services to meet the daily needs of residents of the municipality. General commercial uses that do not have outside activities such as night use, drive-up windows, gasoline sales, significant late night parking lot activity, or similar impacts adjacent to the lower intensity land use, i.e. hardware stores, non-drive-through restaurants, drugstores. And then highway commercial, which is uses in facilities which primarily serve the traveling public, such as automobile-oriented facilities, tourist facilities, eating establishments, indoor recreation establishments, etc. The intensity of uses in each commercial zone must be sensitive to the overall rural and nature character of the township. Uses in these zones should be evaluated and updated to include uses that will spur economic development of the township and to support and protect townships' ecological and agricultural assets. Examples of these uses include agritourism, ecotourism, boutique hotels, museums, specialty retail shops, etc. So that's all one bullet point. So we should probably talk about all that further. So I think that one of the first things that we need to deal with neighborhood commercial, I think is really kind of not used in Bethlehem Township at all. Is it? I mean, do we have? No, nothing.
I mean, their houses, my houses,
But
Taking advantage of.
or not taking advantage of it.
But the hotel's probably in that, and we thought.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Hotel again.
yeah,
Carol Burns, the old hotel next to the old municipal building. I mean, that could be. That's got 2 empty floors, which used to be a hotel. So I can see something in the future. I mean, Carolyn and Greg have no, desire to do it right now. They've fixed up with, as far as they want to do it right now. But nobody knows, they're not young.
so is that
Anything
something,
could change.
right,
So is it something that could definitely change? I can see that change.
right, but is it something that we want to encourage? Do we want to have Brad and Judy's coffee shop? You know, on Brunswick Pike.
Would it be helpful to have a zoning map for everybody to take a look at, just so you guys pretty much know where everything and.
Well, the neighborhood commercial zone is pretty small.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's, yeah,
it basically goes up to Hoppock School.
right. Yeah, it's so.
Hoppock and around the bend, up to 173.
Not screwed up.
I did get it,
There we go.
but I have one in my office.
Okay. So, I mean, so that used to be, that used to be a village. And so that village, at one time had general stores and that's where everybody.
Lumber mill.
Right, yeah. And there was a peach, wasn't there a peach basket, factory there as well?
There we go.
You're gonna put it?
On the table.
Oh, sure.
I overlooking.
Unless where you gonna put the easel?
Somewhat closer.
Now we're back into, we could have two screens on each side.
It's not light.
Would you guys like to do something?
It's fine, it's a little heavy.
Charlie, Andrew, come around and see it.
Gonna support it?
Okay. Don't move.
I'll breathe with that. Yeah. The next is pretty rigid. Okay.
All right, Brad, it's point two.
Don't breathe.
So,
So this little red spot right here,
Yeah.
which is Brunswick Pike, part of 173, or part of Tunnel, that must be part of
A
Tunnel.
little bit up to the church.
Right.
yeah.
So that tiny little piece there is.
So it's all what used to be.
So it used to be the center core of the town,
Right.
so.
Well,
it-
West Portland,
It had, yeah, well, West Portland wasn't town.
right,
When everything else was farmland.
yeah.
So you had your seat of government, there was a train stop right there. You had, religion, you had your post office, you had your grocery, your general store. Pretty much everything was in that little part of town.
And your ironsmith, your
Your
blacksmith.
blacksmith, your blacksmith was across the street. So I mean, I like how actually she did split it up.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
It does make sense. It would be. I don't think it would financially ever get off the ground, but it would be a very interesting little piece of town that it could ever be, revitalized into a very quaint little, it would be interesting.
Well, Franklin Township in Warren County has, as downtown Asbury, they actually
Go the easy way.
have received a community block grant to create and then, I don't say develop, but redevelop that neighborhood zone in Asbury. So they, like I say, take money, but they're able to get on the state to help, and they're gonna fix the sidewalks, make it more walkable, link it to the Asbury Mill and the museum and some offices that are there. So it would be it'd be similar to that. So if you got rid of it, you would lose that opportunity. But again, it wasn't an easy lift. It took years to get that. It took about 4 or 5 years, for them to get that designation. And then there's a bunch of meetings to work on what's appropriate and figure out the funding for the walkability. But it could create a cute little downtown space, maybe an economic driver for them.
And that last sub bullet talks about how the use is evaluated and updated, so I mean, this at least separates them, which starts the ball rolling, and then, it's recommended to take a look at how you might wanna change what's allowed in each one of those.
Right.
Well, and it's so for the neighborhood commercial, the reality is unless you're buying out some properties, there's no parking here. You couldn't have a general store there.
Well,
Right,
again,
even having a hotel, active hotel, you might be able to get 5 parking spots, so.
but there's, from land planning now, we have access to, Jugtown Mountain Park. It's gonna be like that forever. We have the corner lot of Asbury West Brunswick Pike, which is, possibly gonna come into, township ownership. Where the old blacksmith shop, that could turn into something maybe possibly the township ownership, which could then give, some parking and some direct access to a park and to some trails that could get some movement there. So,
And what Franklin's exploring is the church, I don't know what denomination it is, but the brick church, it's on the right of the cemetery. Using their parking lot as public parking during the week because it's not being used for the church services. And then there's associated upgrades for the crosswalks and sidewalks, so that people have access to get to the little the Asbury coffee shop and the museum. And potentially some other little small office, reconstructions that are going on in the area as well. So, there's creative ways. I'm not saying we have to keep it, I'm just, it is a lot of work and so it's much further down the road, but,
If we get rid of it, I think we lose out on possibility. I think keeping it.
I was kind of implying that we should get rid of it, but I just want to go with the uses listed here. Are realistic uses, I think is more so an accounting office, right, that only is gonna have 2 cars at a time. Or a dentist or, or something that isn't a lot of an enough traffic, right?
So much more.
Well, again, we can add, the term, professional offices.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's the point of this section here is to have, on our wish list, the broader conversation of what makes sense for these different
Yeah.
spaces. And it talks about evaluating and updating uses for.
No, and this is just an example of what it's like.
Well, we're not trying to solve it.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
actually, I mean, we really should discuss this more in depth, because this is actually, these are recommended changes to the township land use ordinance. So we are actually making recommendations here for what things we want to change. So if we do want to change uses here, we should.
Again, I don't think we're changing uses. A lot of these uses are already in
Right,
our zoning.
but if we want to make changes.
I think this is making it very, very specific. That's where this is getting down to. This is more of a, specific items in it, whereas these, under the current umbrella of all 3 locations, there's an umbrella of uses within all 3. This is just breaking them down into.
Right, but and I think that if we want to add a use, say, into the neighborhood commercial, we should probably, try and tack that down now.
Well, and again, we can add in just offices in general offices. That's currently allowed, it's currently in it. This is what was explained as far as getting a little bit more tight.
I would suggest, like, do we, for tonight, do we agree or disagree with neighborhood commercial, general commercial, highway commercial? And then the next step would
The
be,
next step was,
so we can kind of keep on track for getting.
we can change our uses then.
So that'd be a good opportunity to also get public input on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly, at the end of the day, when this is all done, that might be somewhere that the public wants to weigh in on. But I mean, this is all gonna be available for the public to weigh in on, so, the sooner we get to specifics. I agree that, maybe just put it down for now and then tackle the specifics once we start getting in, more with the planner.
And for instance, right now, what we have, if you look at that section, the NCHC and GC, they just have general principal permitted uses, they include offices, banks, restaurants, blah, 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 so not everything that's allowed in those 3 combined zones is on this list.
Right.
So, but the current list doesn't say this use is for this zone.
No.
Again, she's breaking it up.
Exactly.
Right.
So just, I'm hearing offices, she doesn't have offices anywhere here, but our ordinance right now allows offices in those zones. So
I
we
think
can-
one of the things we were trying to do and add into it is the ecotourism or the agritourism, going to the farms. If you have a bed and breakfast, if you have a farm stand, if you've got something, so, when somebody wants to park a car and then go up for a hike here, come back, go to the next area, maybe you have water, maybe you have a bathroom or something like that. How do we make it such that people want to come to Bethlehem Township to experience the natural resources that we've got here? And that was part of why we started adding in the agritourism, the ecotourism, maybe a boutique bed and breakfast. You want to come here and you can do 3 different hikes, right, in a day or something like that.
Then I don't know how that would be incorporated into the land use law.
Well, the thing is how do you make it easy for those types of
Start.
places to
Uses,
be,
yeah,
those uses?
Yeah, we're making it so it's easier for people to start something up.
exactly, yeah.
Or expand.
Or expand.
Port Pumpkin is great.
Yeah,
It's just one time a year, there's things that can be done, and so you look at Alexandria, the township, the Ironbound Hard Cider, I don't know if we want, that has to be used, or maybe that is appropriate use, but I think that's a pretty solid example of, good economic driver for
Yeah.
a rural community that really hasn't had any negative impacts.
so I think what I'm interpreting then is that we would want to add into this, the ability to open up more uses in these certain zones, and then we'll drill down on exactly where we would want to put them.
Yeah.
Things like that, okay.
So are we agreeing that we're gonna leave this section intact verbatim, and we're not adding anything or taking anything away? I got
Yeah.
one.
No, I think.
We're just reading them all over again.
You are now.
For now, just what I'm sending back to her.
Yes.
We can leave them like this with the intention that there will be some public.
Yeah, because nothing's final.
Some additional,
There may be some tweaking and public
Yeah.
comment.
I think she expects
But
it.
this is very definition of the very thing.
What were you saying, Monica?
No, I think that
She's-
she's expecting that after public comment, we're gonna have additional
Yeah,
changes
yeah.
and stuff like that. So it's nothing in stone. I just wanna make sure I'm not sending her edits that are superfluous right now.
Right. So the next meeting though is not gonna be the public meeting. That's gonna be where we talk with her and make comments.
I think the question that I would ask the planner, and maybe we can think about, because it's been the challenge all along, because these zones, the reality is they're along 173, they're either R 173 or 173. Is the consistency along 173, so you have homes intertwined with commercial businesses, you have dual use business homes that are there. And so how do we then make some consistency, because and this is, you know, I think we've asked from a planning perspective, and you know, we've all been here for planning work for some time. If we want to make this zone more economically viable and then have a stronger tax base for the township, because I think that that's really been the goal, is to do it in a way that's respectful for our resources, but to create a more dependable tax base, so the residents are not stuck with residential homes bearing the brunt of our taxes. We need more consistency along 173 for the types of businesses that are there. So I think that's where the challenge is how do these look for consistency? And then as time goes, how do we then achieve that consistency with what's there? And then that's where the planner has to answer, because we're not.
Yeah, how can we
How can we design this?
design it, yeah, to be, again, in keeping with the, sensitive to the rural nature and character of the town. And, so, yes, so that's where the art of it lies, right? Are we done with that one?
Yeah.
So the next one is amend section 102-8 entitled definitions. To include definitions of agritourism and tourism-oriented businesses and manufacturing. Manufacturing light, I think that should be light manufacturing.
You could do it that way, or we probably have manufacturing heavy or manufacturing independent, like,
Okay.
that's the way it is when you put it in definition in,
Yeah,
alphabetical order.
right, yeah. So suggested definitions are as follows. Agritourism, any activity incidental to the operation of a farm that brings members of the public to the farm for educational, recreational, or retail purposes. Tourism-oriented businesses and commercial establishments catering primarily to persons traveling for pleasure, recreation, etc., does not include hotels. Manufacturing, light, an establishment engaged in the transformation of finished products or parts into new products, and where all processing, fabricating, assembly, or disassembly of items takes place wholly within an enclosed building. So there's a lot there, but I think that,
I mean, it's, again, the tourism oriented, does not include hotels. Again, not knowing where it's going, I think we could probably strike that, whether we do or allow, B&Bs.
so you wanna say strike does not include hotels?
Strike does not include hotels. I think that's basically giving right off the bat something where I don't think we want to go. I mean, we're not gonna get a hotel chain, we're not gonna get
Right,
a Holiday Inn, that's
so
not.
we
what
want
we're
better
looking at.
breakfasts or.
But again,
Yeah.
speaking of, what we have in town, we have it, could be a,
Right,
a
what's
6-room,
motel?
hotel, there, hotel, or,
You could say which may or may not. Because again, this is just a guidance. Ultimately, the ordinance that's put into place has to make that determination, so that leaves you open to either one.
so
The mayor.
may or may not include.
Right. One problem with the system. Hard to write on this. And everybody's okay with
Is
it?
hotels classified though as the same thing as like
Yeah,
B&Bs and everything? You know what I'm saying? Because then I'm reading back on when we were talking, and highway commercial too.
Well, we have a definition of hotel. The word hotel is a motel, a building or group of buildings consisting of individual sleeping units designed for transient travelers and not for permanent residents. So I guess if we do mention hotels, we should make sure that the definition we want.
Yes, and. Yes, and then does it or does it not constitute tourism oriented business? Because where I'm thinking she's going with this, and obviously she's gonna have to answer, but. Expecting that. That particular term of art is going to be used as permitted use in one of these zones.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I would ask, what do we want? I mean, this question's not for tonight, but for the
Yeah.
planners, because I could see like, you had the Holiday Inn in Clinton, was kind of its own oasis. I don't know when the demand for that would come back, but you can see something like that popping up along 173. So do we want that? And then also, are there limits, like with the definition there for the hotel motel use tax? Which then is beneficial to the town, but does that start at 6 rooms, 10 rooms? I don't know. Do we then include our definition to, or is there some other way to put a clause for sizing? So if we only want to encourage B&Bs, not to exceed 10 bedrooms or 10 spaces, whatever.
and I think that would be done at the ordinance level.
But
This gives the framework, because remember, the ordinance is gonna be introduced to council and come here for consistency. If our master plan says that that may or may not include hotels, then it gives the
Because.
ability
Yeah.
to go either way, and the ordinance itself will get into the nitty gritty of number of persons. Yeah.
Yeah, so really, the only thing that really changed there is may or may not. And then we're happy with, light manufacturing. I don't see any, I mean, the only question about that is, does anybody have a problem with?
We have light manufacturing in town, and
Right.
it's quiet. I think it's,
You talk about the.
there's a bunch of small manufacturing, yeah. I mean, again, we're not having issues with it, so
Yeah.
I don't see a reason to not wanna
But the
keep it,
that definition is good. Okay,
yeah.
all right. Monica, you good there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and right now, we don't have a definition of manufacturing at all.
Right.
So maybe we should also put in there
And
anything that is not fall within light would be heavy or other or whatever, something like that. I thought we had something in here, and I don't see it.
And always enclosed in a building,
Yep.
nothing outside.
right. Yeah, I mean, that's typically, the way, except for blacksmith shops, they're all kind of enclosed. You want them to be, climate controlled and things like that usually. And yeah, in some instances, they're clean rooms and stuff like that, but, so I guess we should, add into there then that we should define that anything that doesn't fall into this definition falls into the definition of heavy
I mean, whatever.
Okay.
and it's precluded.
and is precluded from certain zones.
Yeah. They'll give you the ability to do that at least.
Right. Okay, Monica, got that?
Yeah.
All right, the next bullet item is the township should identify split zone properties and rezone as single zone districts as appropriate based on location, existing use, and surrounding use. That would be,
Again, that's something that I want to see, I would really like to see that happen. More of, like, this is ongoing, so that we're not right down to the, end where changes have to be done. I think we need to identify them. And then see what in time over this next, few years, to see what properties look like and what makes the most sense for that property.
so I guess the first thing that we would need then is a list of
Properties.
all properties that are split zone. I mean, some of them are, on highway commercial and then mountain residential, but some of them are also like that applicant that came in a couple of weeks ago, was, R1, 1.5, and the other one was mountain residential, which was 5 acres, so, and that was, a split lot, so, I think it's gonna be a little harder than we think it is to find them all. But we really should kind of look into that and identify them all, and then, try to move with just one ordinance if we can to correct all of them, right? I guess the only thing that we gotta determine is which way they go.
Again, I'd like to see it where, at least the existing owner of that property has some say, the discussion happens. And, see if we can come up to kind of do a verdict, so that everybody's happy, and move forward with that.
So if we were to take a property that is split zone, and, say it's split zone mountain residential and the front it has highway commercial. Would we, by changing that to highway commercial, would the existing use no longer be conforming? So then they'd have to come for variances for anything they did, right?
It could be, it would then be a pre-existing use.
Right, but then if they want to make any changes to their property,
Correct.
that would give
Yeah.
them. So that is
Something
something.
to expand the use and
Yes.
just be what it is.
And that's where I think the dialogue would come in. You might, I have to think this through a little bit, but you might. Do an overlay. I don't know, I think we gotta identify what they are first and see how difficult that hurdle is and what the issues might be. Maybe you could find a way to,
Yeah, I understand your point about doing an overlay.
yeah,
That would allow what's there to exist and to change,
exactly.
but it would also
Any
allow.
new development that differs from that would have to conform with the new, something like that, new zoning.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is one that we'll definitely have to look at. So I think the only thing that we want to add there is just that a list should be compiled. Right?
Yeah, it's more of the identifying the split zone properties, that's, right, that's our list, and then.
And also priority.
Yes, that's already.
Yeah, you don't really have to worry about residential as much as highway commercial, which is.
I think it makes sense to look at everything, and not just, cherry pick a certain area of town, like do the whole town. And, we don't have any sort of questions about, any sort of ulterior motives or anything else, it's, we really need to, we just go within the whole town,
I mean, split zones are just bad planning,
it's tough.
so it's certainly something that you want to get rid of, if you can.
Okay, so are we adding into this section that we need to have a list? Is that?
No, it's actually, it's already,
It's there.
it already says identify, so. All right, so the next one is, while the land use ordinance does not currently permit warehousing as a permitted use in any of the zoning districts, the ordinance includes references to warehousing in the definitions and attachment 11. Design element risk testing requires performance standards for preferred design elements and remedial plan elements for development on karst terrain. using the state's and Highlands warehouse siting guidance as a tool, the township should review the zoning ordinance to ensure that only appropriate forms of warehousing are located within the township. I don't think that.
I think the last thing I would know if we should just remove warehousing.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Do you want that, do you want to allow that anyway?
Yeah, I mean, it really, I mean, I guess there's the one property at the very end, the one by the highway.
Red zone.
Yeah, in the ROM, you know, that could possibly, what did you say, 130,000 square feet or something?
No, there's 98,000, it was.
98,000, but I mean, that has to also include parking and paving, so that's all impervious surfaces. That does not leave, you know, much, but at the same time, you know, we've been fighting against warehouses next door, we certainly shouldn't allow them in our town, so.
Again, we could strike that out, not allow warehousing, and then people, you know.
It's probably more appropriate as a flex, manufacturing, light
Yeah, exactly.
than anything else.
So the only thing is that, so we would have to then, strike some, references in our,
Right.
in our current master plan, our current ordinances.
I mean-
Or the planner said something about you can't specifically target warehouses and just say like across the board they're prohibited.
Well, what we have to say is why we wouldn't permit warehousing. In certain zones, so the only zone that really could have it would be the ROM.
Which is actually then the next comment is review the ROM and evaluate existing use and its bulk standards and appropriate for that. But then to use Highlands, obviously is a pretty good reasoning.
Yeah.
For that this is our only place and it's not appropriate based upon Highlands regulations.
Right.
I think those two sections we definitely should have more expanded on the next time we're here, because, you know, our ordinance says if it's not specifically permitted, then it's prohibited, so I think that's helpful. Having a definition somewhere may be helpful to the extent that you want to use it to differentiate what someone may be saying is coming in here, and you're like, oh no, this is our definition of warehouse,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
actually a warehouse,
Yeah.
not what you're saying, that's what this is.
Yeah.
And then she can comment on what you're saying as well, because I think this tool, this guidance that came out for the Highlands area may give us some more information about this.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the conversation was spawned by the idea too, that there's different types of warehousing. I mean, a lot of people initially picture like the gigantic dagger warehouses, but there's more vertical warehouses that are going right now too, so they require a smaller footprint, lot size. But it would still generate a significant amount of truck traffic and all the other things that are still problematic to our community, so it's worth exploring.
Yep.
If there's an opportunity to limit that kind of use.
But to Jose, to your point though, there are references, lots of references throughout the other ordinances that reference warehouse.
Exactly.
So those ordinances in theory should strike that reference.
I mean, years ago, when we were looking to somehow get something in the ROM, we opened that up to have warehousing. Yeah, because that was at a time when that, you know, nothing was happening and we wanted to make things more available. For anybody to come in and propose something. But obviously now, you know, it's become a real issue because, you know, we never envisioned the size of the warehouses that are being built these days. So, and, you know, a lot of the things that would restrict anything like that is the heights and things like that that they're falling for, because that's what you're talking about is that, you know, if you make them really high, you can get a lot of stuff in there, without taking up a big footprint, but then, you know, you have this huge open building.
And you still have tons of trucks coming
And
in.
that's, you have all the trucks, and so. I think that the Highlands gives us a pretty good, reason to say that, you know, we can't have, we're having in any of our districts. So, okay, so the next one was review the RM zone, so.
Hang on, 1 second. Kara?
Yes.
Can you give me language to send to the,
I'm making all these notes, if you want to put a list together, I can compare it.
I just want to make sure that I capture,
Yep, absolutely.
because you seem to know what you want out of that, so I want to make sure it's clean.
I think I understand where everybody wants to go.
So the next one is I'm gonna skip over the review the RO since we just talked about that. The next one is the township's land development regulations should be thoroughly reviewed to ensure the planning board has adequate documentation at the time of any application for development.
I mean, it sounds to me like that's
That's a
a
checklist,
recommendation
right?
for a checklist.
So we already have a checklist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
And, you know, just remember from your perspective, just because something is not submitted as a checklist item, that just goes towards completeness. At
right,
any point in time during an application, if you
You can
feel
ask
you
for
need
anything.
something, you can just ask.
exactly. So should we strike that one or should,
Remember that was something that, Tom had wanted us to reevaluate the checklist and the application format and everything. Would that fall under that or no?
well, if that's the case, then we should, because right now this kind of insinuates that we do not have the checklist. So I think that what we should say, if we want to say something like that, is that we should review the checklist to ensure that, that adequate documentation is available at time for any application for development.
I mean, we could, sorry. We reviewed that checklist.
The checklist, yeah, I mean, the checklist is 6 or 7 years old. I don't see where this should even be in here.
So, yeah, so this is.
I mean,
the
I really think this should be, if we want to update the checklist, we can do that. That's our documentation.
And maybe the direction is, let's ask Tom what he thinks is missing. And have Tom give us a
We can ask him.
list or thoughts, whatever.
I would be for striking it unless Tom has a valid reason that, I don't know.
I thought we made a move to try and simplify that checklist, not add to it.
Well, we did.
Yeah, make it
We did.
easier for the
That was-
applicants, not more.
When I first started, that's what he wanted to do, and we got together and
Did the planner have access to the checklist, or do they not know they have? So that's.
I don't recall if that was something she asked for.
Yeah, so she
I
may
just,
just,
put a note there that we have a checklist. You can supply that to her and they,
Maybe she has some special cases involved, in her mind.
or she might not know about.
Yeah, it very well could have been that it was one of the items in section A, B, or C,
Yeah,
probably section A. And that, you know, she didn't see anywhere that it had been changed, but, so, you know, again, some of this stuff is to act on the things that weren't acted on before. And some of it is explaining what actions we took on the 2012 review. So the next item is the township may want to consider incorporating dark sky compliance standards, which may be appropriate for rural communities like Bethlehem Township. The International Dark Sky Association is a grassroots advocate network that shares best practices and tools to protect the night skies from present and future generations. The township should consider implementing dark sky compliance standards that reduce glare, light trespass, and sky glow as a means to retain the rural character of the township. And I think, yeah, we do right now require downlighting on any, site plan. I think we could probably dress up our lighting plan for, any kind of residential lighting.
I think that's what this is more targeting is
Yeah.
residential.
Yeah.
maybe the environmental commission could make this like maybe next year.
So let's put in the thing, we want to put it in that, request for grant,
Excellent.
okay? One way to save electricity.
I mean, the one thing that is, I think is a really important thing is the night glow, the sky glow, you know?
Yeah.
I know that right now, you know, I can see Clinton, no problem. From
But
right-
they'd be a resource. This organization would definitely be a
Yeah,
resource.
Almost,
Very good.
I think we should leave it there.
leave it in.
yeah,
No,
I think
absolutely.
leave it in. I'm also thinking also for neighbors, I mean, you
Yeah.
know, light shining in from a neighbor's spotlight or something like that.
Yeah, that's.
See that for miles.
You can, because with LED lights.
Yeah. All right, so that one definitely stays in.
Yes.
So the following are additional recommendations. In accordance with recent legislative changes concerning events on preserved farms, the township should consider implementing a municipal permitting program as permitted by law. So that would be like if,
Special event ordinance, something like that. I'm thinking of one.
yeah, so now the only question is, would that fall onto somebody like, Monica's Farm or whatever that was?
Well,
But
yeah, Judy just went through, like I said, I
Yeah.
had missed it unfortunately, but their farm, they just followed the session.
Yeah, I went to a farmland preservation meeting, a few weeks ago, and this was a big topic of conversation. It was strongly recommended that when it gets to the special events, that the townships start to look at getting ahead of some of what we want to permit versus not permit.
Yeah,
It talked about the types of structures that people use for these events, movement of soil. On some of these events, we could, if we wanted to, it really depends on how. You know, much governing we want to do, you can limit the number of people, there were a lot of different suggestions that we could move in this area. It really just depends on how tight or loose we want it.
I mean, you've got some towns where you have to submit a plan. This
Yeah,
is our plan for where the traffic's gonna come in, where they're gonna park, this is a
Yep.
layout, this is where everything's gonna be, this is where the porta potties are, like. You can
Yeah.
go, like you
they
said.
also limit the number of times you could do these
Correct.
events.
yeah,
Correct.
so, I mean,
Year.
like I said, it really just depends on how much we wanna oversee versus property rights, I guess you wanna use that language, I don't know.
Again, leaving it in there is not gonna,
No, leaving it in there is
it's
good.
not hurting anything,
Yeah.
it's something that we can do if it's in there.
The end of section C describes that change to a special occasion,
Let's just move.
So this is just
Move
a-
on.
saying, make a permit.
But we also want to make ourselves aware of what
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
passed already, was
Yeah.
passed already. Because to see, because I'm not sure how much the state supersedes anything that we will put. Let's not knock ourselves senseless for something that's been passed. You read that was extensive, but, Governor Murphy, and the rest passed.
okay, I've been told to read that. So review and evaluate interconnectedness of public accessible open space properties. The township should create an inventory of all public use easements, conservation easements, and deeds that will help identify areas that may be underutilized and recommend additional easements or connections along roadways that would better link the township's open spaces. I think that
Right
that's,
there, we can like the parks, the best, that goes into our hiking, the ability for hiking trails and stuff like that.
yeah, that is an effort that we've been trying to make over the years. I think continuing that would be.
You know, Turkey Hill, you have one property, 39 acres, another 100 acres, and you can't get from one to the other. However, there's an easement along the highway.
Right.
Big enough and safe enough that you can make a trail to connect them.
I thought we did make a trail that connected those.
Now,
There's quite a few easements throughout town.
I say, let's do that,
to connect.
yeah, something with, we just actually just approved, 2 months ago, a trail that comes onto River Road to connect the loop trail for the Muscatine Common Watershed Association.
Yeah,
So, we do try, there are county parks that we can connect along the, what I call the Mountain Ridge. So we actively work on it.
I think they might be a good resource, because I know they just put together a year or two ago an entire map that is now virtual, that you can click on to see where you can park. Cause I know when I was on that, it was,
And the one we just approved, I think is the first and only, full loop. Yeah, so you can park in one spot, do the full loop and
and get back to your car.
What is that resource?
Muscatine Common Watershed Association.
yeah, they just did, I'm pretty sure, Paul, because I knew you're on that, like I said, when I was working with them, they actually created, I remember when they presented it, it was a virtual, you can go online, you can actually look at their state places and where you can park, like, because they'll actually direct you where parking is and all that stuff.
Yes, that's pretty much, so there's a watershed association, so it's local, but I think that's the Muscatine Rivershed
Yeah.
Association.
Yeah,
And that goes from the whole the whole Muscatine County, so it's like 7 municipalities.
Muscatine County watershed.
So you're still the alternate, so you should still join all the meetings.
Am I?
You are.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I didn't know.
Yeah. All right, so the next thing.
I told them. Oh.
So I just filled out the thing this year, so the June's the 3rd, so I've been going to the meetings since the pandemic's 2020, somehow I ended up, I think when you came on the planning board somehow. You
Well,
weren't,
Greg had stepped down and asked me to
Okay.
take over, so
Yeah.
I did, and I started going, then
Sounds good.
COVID hit, and I was doing the online stuff, and then I think
so I called, you're still the alternate, so you're welcome to join those, and those are public meetings, they're all virtual, but they're subject to sunshine. There's second and third Tuesday, I don't know on my calendar, but they're every other month.
Okay, so the next item is the emerald ash borer is a significant threat to the forested areas of the township. The township should review its ordinances and determine whether new ordinances or ordinance revisions are necessary. Examples include determine whether the township tree replacement ordinance should require stricter standards. Review the ordinance to determine whether there are standards in place pertaining to tree clearing, especially as it pertains to new development. Provide education and outreach to property owners regarding woodlands management techniques and strategies. So I think that that's pretty well covered. I think that the only thing that, I would question is, are the tree replacement ordinance should require stricter standards. I don't know. I don't think that
We
we
don't
allow.
allow that
We
anymore.
don't allow any
Okay,
emerald ash borers.
okay, that's what I
Or
mean.
any ash trees.
Yeah.
We certainly don't allow. emerald ash borers.
We talked earlier about, harming the electric infrastructure, should we add anything in there for looking for grants, like, or anything towards? Is there anything the town could do to try to save the power from going out because of those trees?
Well, I think that could be something that we do, an ordinance that we could put in place to.
I'm saying, like, other sections said, look for funding from the state, but if we add something in there, like research funding from the state for cutting dead trees down.
Well, the power company's obligation to that, right?
Yeah, the Jason Greenhouse did put together
Yeah,
it's a 1.1
something.
billion dollar plan that, has initial approval from DPU, and part of it is resiliency, including trees, because there's a lot of infrastructure that they're actually going to be replacing. I'll share this Thursday night, I don't know if we can qualify or not, the county has 2 new $1 million grant programs. One is for parks and recreation, which I looked at first, and actually was going to apply for the connectivity of the parks. But then they have a second one for road infrastructure, and so the likelihood of getting both. So I'm asking the county, actually I just sent an email today, so I haven't had an answer, but I'm asking the county if addressing the dead trees, primarily ash trees along our roadways is considered infrastructure, stability, whatever it is, I think it is. And then we'll be applying to the county for funding for that, addressing it in a more proactive way. They said we reached out for some federal help, and that funding has now been absorbed into the tunnel now that it's back on track.
So I did think along those lines that we had something in here specifically geared towards hardening our power distribution system in this.
It's back in another, it's in the old section.
Is it?
I think it's.
Yeah, we had.
Yeah.
Yeah, we already, it's page 31, backup power sources for schools, vegetation management, repetitive loss mitigation, continuity of operation plan.
So, but what section is that in? That's in section C, right?
Well.
That's on page 31, but section.
Backup power for schools, child class importance. Section two. So that is section C, so is that?
So we were already.
So we'll have to ask whether or not section C was not just a recommendation from the last, reevaluation, and whether or not we need to address it in this evaluation.
There are actually action items in section C.
But yeah, there were action items in the last reevaluation, whether or not we actually did them.
Those may have been the action items from the last time.
Right, that's what I, yeah. So
We might have gotten it.
But did any of them specifically address the trees?
Yes, the very next sentence of that was vegetation management, for foliage management and preventive maintenance by power companies, result in extended power outages. So this has been around.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is that it was pointed out in our last evaluation, but we didn't really do anything about it.
Well,
Yeah,
I've checked like the
Right, but
backup power for schools. So the township doesn't have direct control over that, but I also share that, outside agencies then look for those as shelters, so,
yeah,
do we want to do that? Do we then want to have our schools open, for Red Cross shelters for Saturday? There'd be other agencies, but if they have that ability, then there's nothing, it's kind of like, it's one of those things like a group home, we can't really say no.
right.
So yes, we want the schools to be resilient, but do we necessarily then want to become a shelter for large disasters in our region?
So I think that, we probably want to say that, repeat what we say on page 30. And say that we really need to address this. And this-
Repeat it here.
Yeah, repeat it here.
so you also need, like, one of the problems we've had is the trees, where people complain that they're too expensive to cut down. But then if the power company comes by and says, I want to cut the tree down, and it's, then some people might say, no, it's on my property, you don't have the right to do that. Right, it's outside of the buffer.
Well, they won't, most of the time, the power company doesn't want to touch it.
Right, but if it's dead, right, but. Then, right, but so, 50-foot ash tree, 1 foot out of the buffer, it's gonna take the power out. So
Yeah,
what,
for sure.
so what does vegetation management do us if they don't have the right to cut a dead tree down?
Well, it's not that they don't have the right, it's that they don't want to.
They won't.
You see, the problem is that the tree clearing company is hired on a contract. And it's not specified how many trees they have to take out, they just get a fixed price. So their whole thing is, they wanna zip through as quick as they can, take down as few trees as they can, and get out of there and satisfy their contract. So
Right, but how does that contract benefit that like town?
it does.
Right, exactly. So, I don't understand, anyways, I need to move on.
We did, we actually had we talked about this last time, okay, so, probably not even a year ago, Lindsay, myself sat with our JCP&L rep, and then there are 3 tree mitigation specialists, so you have a, crew manager who drives around, so the resident reports a tree hanging over a wire, we call that in, this person goes out and assesses whether it should be cut down or not. Then there's the person above him, and she was there and is kind of more responsible for that, seasonal, so there is like every 4 years is a heavy cut with a rotation in between of light cuts. And then we had the senior, he's the vice president of vegetation management, who apparently just came over from PSCG, I think they're probably bounced between the two, it's probably the same 2 or 3 people. But he actually, he came out here, that was his job, all his job is to cut and spend as little as possible, and he, you're sharing, I forget the number, I'd have to go back to my note, but, there's 100, I think he said like on average, without a storm, there are 104 tree crews throughout the state of New Jersey for JCP&L. And they just keep going in circles, but, there's a cost to it, so then, obviously it's not completely, as the cost of JCP&L. I keep asking the question, I don't know what their internal numbers are, like we had 173 3 weeks ago. We had 3 trees in the exact same spot come down after hours, so to me, what's the cost benefit analysis of cutting down 10 trees versus paying a crew to come out at 1 in the morning at overtime? I don't know, but they
think that way.
they don't.
Yeah, well, that's-
Even with the dead trees, they only, if the tree's here, but anyway, they just cut the limb. They don't even cut the dead
Yeah.
trees, so the tree's still gonna fall. And hopefully now that the weight's not towards the line, hopefully it doesn't hit the line, like they won't cut the whole tree
Yeah,
down,
they
they just cut the limb.
No, they told me they're only allowed to cut
Yes.
6 inches.
Yeah.
If it's more than 6 inches, they can't cut it.
No, in front of my house,
The rotation of.
Yeah, it depends on the rotation.
And there's a big.
yeah, in front of my house, we had a dead cherry tree that was, it was in, right underneath the power line. And so they took that out completely. And, you know, they will take some things like that out. You
But I
know,
would bet the ones in the 173 that you were talking about weren't within the right of way, right?
No, they weren't, they were,
Right,
it was
so-
a railroad or some other private.
Right, so I agree with you, I don't like to know what the cost benefit analysis is, but again, you still get to the point that
They may
I
not-
don't know who's driving. So,
so you gotta remember that you have different divisions. You got the division that takes care of emergency outages, and you got the division that takes care of cutting down trees. And,
Maintenance.
you know, they don't wanna take money from their own budget.
Right, so leaving that in there, I mean, as far as trees
Mm-hmm.
and maintenance, that's
Yeah.
been a concern.
And then we're gonna move that section from page 30.
And then page 31 has a separate high priority box
Yeah.
currently on there.
Yeah,
And
so we wanna move that into this,
that over there.
into this section too, right?
Well,
That is in.
Okay. And the last one, section E, recommended redevelopment plans.
all right, so, one item that's not there that I think should go in there is something about,
In section D.
as far as D, we have nothing about traffic, we have nothing about our roads, how they're used. I think we need something in here which has, I don't know how the wording should be, but we have, you know, Iron Bridge is down because of the truck. Routinely, trucks are stuck on roads, they're on side roads, it's probably the single biggest complaint just on social media about traffic on Charlestown Road.
You want a study of usage on certain
I would
streets?
say, I mean, something within how
I think what we want
we
is
have
a
a network.
study of ways of stopping.
Or routing, you know, maybe going to the GPS companies with, you know, with formal truck routing algorithms.
That
Some,
exists, but the problem is that none of these people are.
they might not have a truck, but
use.
again, we need something to discuss it, that's in our master plan. That's what I'm trying to
New
do.
Jersey does have proposed, assembly bill requiring commercial GPS usage. It's not approved yet. But we should, it's the same thing, like,
But having something.
yeah, like I said, work with Justin, you know, the same thing, work with DOT, when we had the problem with the, it's an ongoing problem with the rock blasting. And all the detour routes, we had a meeting with DOT, and they actually put their traffic manager on call with us. He gave us a list of all the GPS companies, to contact, and we gave them a list of all of our truck restricted roads, and they all basically disappeared, so as long as somebody's using a truck GPS, tunnel road will never show up as an option
Right.
to them. And then they took it, but we can only do our local roads, so then we go to the county's on the call with us too, and the state had to be responsive as well, and they got rid of state roads, which are far and few between, but the county could also add their.
I mean, is there some,
Charlestown still be in there.
Charlestown is still in there, Charlestown, I've had long discussions, this is, I know we're trying to, I met with the county engineer years ago, Charlestown is what's considered a relief road.
yeah,
So in the state DOT system, you have, 78, then 31, and then your relief roads. And Charlestown is considered a relief road, so they will not, they allow things that have estimate, and they won't change it because it's to that, and Ferry West Portal coming down through 31 to Washington, because that's also considered a relief road, because of their, so there's certain roads that the county, both the Hunter County tries to work with us, but then when it comes to that, they can't come out with it.
yeah, there's a bad accident close as 31. They have to have a way to get you
Yeah,
around.
everybody routing around.
But there's certain things that we're never gonna be able to stop.
Right, so Paris putting the word together
Okay.
for that bullet point. All right, section E.
Section E is a recommendation. It's regarding electrical vehicle. Oh, I'm sorry. No, section E was redevelopment plans, but there's nothing, we have no redevelopment plan.
But a note, maybe the planner can explain how we would use that, because,
I think that'd be more in line with what you were saying about the whole 173 corridor.
yeah, so it's been years, I couldn't share details at this point, but Committeeman Jimenez and I had gone to the municipalities together, and it could be a useful tool for 173, so maybe our planner can explain how that can be used currently.
Yeah, I mean, typically this is used as brownfield remediation or something like that, but, and we don't have any, I mean, we actually did have the site where the guys who sells the track vehicles,
Yeah.
when that was, you know, that was actually a plastics grinding company that exploded so many times that they just shut the place down, and that was empty for a while.
It's a good tool, but I think, I'll admit, I don't have as much knowledge about it as I should, and I think as a planning board, we should know what our options are.
I mean, it definitely spurs development. It spurs development by providing for potentially, among other things, permitted uses in a particular zone that would attract a developer, and then the pilot asset.
Yeah, there's a
And
pilot.
that's really the big,
Yeah.
you know, the big plus.
Yeah.
15 or 30, depending upon the situation. You don't have to provide one at all, but that's really gonna be your,
Okay.
your driving force.
All right, so the last section, section F, recommendations regarding electrical vehicle infrastructure. So we've actually talked about this before. The recommendations of the planning board concerning location appropriate for the development of public electric vehicle infrastructure included, but not limited to, commercial districts, areas proximate to public transportation and transit facilities and transportation corridors and public rest stops, and recommended changes, if any, in the local development regulations necessary or appropriate for the development of public electric vehicle infrastructure. So it is recommended that the township encourage the installation of public electric vehicle EV infrastructure on non-residential properties throughout the town, especially those that have parking lots on site. Specifically, EV charging stations should be located on township-owned properties and within the general commercial, highway commercial, neighborhood commercial, and manufacturing and R1 zones. Further, in accordance with state law, electric vehicle charging stations and make-ready parking spaces should be permitted accessory uses within all zoning districts in the township. The township should adopt the DCA model statewide municipal EV ordinance, which will codify the state law within the township's land management. So I think that we've already talked about this, and this is something that we were ready to do.
You've not questioned the judgment of people who own electric vehicles? We have our, so we're looking at Rich Park, and we're helping, we're advocating for one of our local businesses to add electrical. Potentially here, we're just not sure about the usefulness here because of the location of our municipal building and how long people actually come here for anything. Yeah, I mean, our planning board is very detailed, so if somebody wanted to come and watch the planning board meeting about fences and plug in for 3 hours, they could. But short of that, people usually aren't in the slot. So that's where or advocating with some of our, it's getting as it gets later, I'll have some jobs. But at the park, we're advocating for some of our commercial entities that are interested in doing that as a draw for their customers. We're helping work with both DCA and JCPenney also has a program.
Can we ask the state, not just that, so the rest stop right over here, right, near the road? It's probably state owned, right, by the campus, campsite, we ask the state to put some there. Convenient place to stop.
Or is that actually?
Yeah, but there's nothing,
There's no rest facility.
there's nothing there.
So what about
I'm just
something
saying.
like that in ROM? So, you know, I saw something that came out where they actually, came out with this new charging station. Forget the name, maybe something, I'll dig it up again, but it's basically almost like a warehouse where now you can plug in, you can drive in, put your car in there, and they've got all these slots, it's covered. They've got a place where you can go to the bathroom and rest while you plug your car in and go there and sit and charge. You know, if you put it by the ROM, with all the navigation things and stuff like that, that could be a nice use for something to be down there.
Go ahead,
You know, we
Nina.
talked about gas stations, I guess you brought up the gas station, I'm thinking, you know, with the EV stuff, putting something right off of 78. Can take a whole bunch of cars and stuff like that. Might be a, you know, a nice thing and a profitable thing that, you know, you could pull somebody to come into.
Well, the models are actually changing. I mean, they're now doing, you know, they're piloting in California. Drive-ins. So they're basically showing short features, half hour, 40-minute movies. And then food and rest of
It's
it.
like a south of the border for EVs.
So it's
Being somebody who has driven an EV all over, I'm telling you, I've stopped where there's almost nothing there. And there's, you know, big spots where everything is like, even like a regular rest stop. But in this area, there are many places where I've driven and you have to go a lot further than I was comfortable going. So there's nothing off of 78 here. There's
There's
nothing.
absolutely nothing yet, because I've got an EV now, and you know, I've been checking the maps, I mean, I can go to, Rack Valley. You know, and again, the size of them is also very, very small.
Round Valley has electric.
Round Valley has chargers in there, supposedly, Governor Murphy said almost all the state parks are supposed to have chargers.
But let me
This one has none.
let me guess, it's not in the boat ramp, so you have to pay to get into the park, to get to the EV, and then find out it's full after you pay.
It's all, we tell them it's in use with the apps, but you do have to go because it's all the way down at the end of the,
Yeah.
What
so
about
you- they
Penn
get the-
Station
yeah,
Diner?
obviously, it says
No, that's expand in, bring people in for lunch, dinner. They may be interested. Oh, are they? Smart.
I love that.
That's very smart.
Okay, all right, it's been a long meeting and we saw quite a bit of stuff still. Right, so that gives us our list. We'll be back to Megan, make some changes, have them in our next meeting, and then hopefully publish to the public what we just discussed. All right, moving on to bylaws. Our discussion point on bylaws was our public comment and time limitations. So that's pretty much what we have to discuss. Do we want to have something in there and add the time limit? There's a couple different, we have, up to 30 people. We have situational time limits. What do we want to ultimately do here?
What's that?
I'm sorry, we have the board.
I like having a situation, I mean, again, there's sometimes people might want to come out and talk, and I kind of like the way you give them the opportunity to get to talk.
So what is an overall number? What do you feel? 15, because it was 30 that was discussed. 30 people in the public, which will then basically, that'll cue off a time, a limit, 3-minute limit, 5-minute limit with 30 people. Do we want to go to 15 people? Well, I'm just overall, like tonight we have 2 people here, we have 2 people on, that's 4, so everybody would have unlimited time.
Okay.
Okay, what we're basically talking about is if there's a total of, you know, whether it's 15 or whether it's 30 between the public and Zoom. If it was 30, then we're gonna limit it.
Yes.
Just so that everybody will then, in theory, have a chance.
Yeah, so,
On page 3 in red, you have the 15 to 29 members of the public. Within the 5 minutes, if there were more than 30, within the 3 minutes.
right. So if you think about it, you know, at 29 people, 5 minutes, you know, you're
Or we're gonna choose the night.
you're using up 2.5 hours of your 3-hour meeting. And just public comment, if everybody stands up and says it. So I think that it's, So I think that, yeah, I'm good with the number, I made up the numbers, so.
Look at the township, so.
Where's you feeling? I understand we don't want to necessarily limit time, but realistically speaking, we have to have something.
Right.
So is this palatable?
Draft.
People I have not heard from, please speak up.
This is the language from Jose.
I
The
like,
very last page.
I like the concept. Brad actually just pointed out, I was wondering the same thing at the time, the language on page 3, there's something. It's kind of a little bit overwritten by the draft 2024, but something about 93 hours, what is that?
Where is that?
Should be 3 hours.
Should be 3 hours. 3 hours.
Okay.
No, right here.
It was
Yeah.
a parenthesis.
Something about
It's a
section
parenthesis.
one,
It was a parenthesis, but I didn't.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's supposed to be a parenthesis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have actually referenced that in section 5, in article 5, section 1. It gives us the hours that we're allowed to hear, which comes out to a total of 3 hours. So that's why we're referencing that, because that's the reason. Yeah.
The only, if I would have, is we need any wording in there about the chairman.
That's there.
That in there. So.
I just made a note for that as well.
Steve? You feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. I always, I said it last time, I always get nervous about not giving
Limited.
people the opportunity because that's who we represent, but I get it. I think it can be quite tedious sometimes.
Okay.
I agree, I don't like limiting people, but yeah, we have to. It's unduly, I'm okay with this.
And what we said too, right, was that, if people, you do have 15, they go through this time limit. And then people, if they wanted to say another thing, they can go to the back of the line and
Reset.
reset, correct? Was that, like, if a person can speak more than once and they'll be able to, if the time
If
allows.
nobody else has,
Correct.
Right, after all, right? Then-
yes, because again, the main,
Well, I don't know if we've ever said that they can, but I think there needs to be some flexibility, because even if there's 40 people in the room, if only 2 are speaking,
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
and giving the chair that flexibility to say, okay, based on what I'm seeing, we've got people that want to talk a little longer, but again, it's really just as a guide.
right,
I mean, I think you've got to use common sense.
Yeah.
I mean, really, when it comes down to. But Ken, you've been doing this forever, so you know how to
And
manage
we
it.
know when we have the large
Yeah,
meetings and
right.
things like that, we've been through it.
And I also think that it's not only for the people here, but it's for the people out there too. Because if you've got a big issue that people want to come out and talk about, and one person's up there for a half hour, that's not fair to everyone that's been sitting here for 4 hours and trying to get their chance to speak. So at least it, moves it along and then, whatever.
good for you.
Yeah, sorry.
That's the issue.
But you know what I'm saying, it's just that,
You're right.
the flip side.
We have a 3-hour meeting, we have to be careful that everybody has a chance to say what they want to say.
Yes.
And that we can still do what we have to do.
So it's not really a restriction, which I think it's very easy for people to look at it that way.
Right.
There's a flip side to all of this.
It's an opportunity to give everybody a chance to speak
Correct.
and encourage them to speak.
Right, so this wording, you want it to,
Let me look at it one more time.
I would love to adopt these tonight, making those changes,
Okay.
all right? I wanna have a set of rules in place, here we are, February, all right? So,
Secretary of the question.
However, last time we were together, we had the section, Article 12, that was to be reviewed by Kara. And that was with allowing, testimony that's outside of an application or something to that effect. Before we, I just want to make sure we address that before.
So essentially, if I'm understanding correctly, it's that, there can be comments from the public with regard to items on the agenda. comments from the public with regard to items not on the agenda. Comments with regard to specific public hearings that are on the agenda must be made during the appropriate public hearing. But the question is, if there's a particular piece of property that someone has an issue with, it's not on the agenda. What does the board want to do if somebody wants to come make a comment about that? Is that essentially what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I mean, the issue is that a lot of times complaints come to this board, and we have no right to, we have no power to do anything.
Correct.
We have no enforcement.
And so, you know, it's going to the wrong place in the first place, but on top of that, if it's something that may come before the board, then we've been prejudiced.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that we want to just cut off.
So I don't have a problem, let's look at this language. Oh, that's what we have to do.
But why don't you look at that? I have a housekeeping item on.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, Monica, section 5, article 5, section 5, remember there was 2 section 5s originally? And you put it on the first section 5, so it doesn't go there. It actually goes in section, what we now call 6.
Yeah. 6 has the underline on it.
Yeah, but it doesn't, it's put in.
No, the insert into section 5 should be an insert into section 6.
Right.
Yeah,
All
because I had to
those-
know where to go.
Yeah,
So I'll take this and put it in section 6.
It should be in section 6 and it should go in after, just before the board may exclude the public only when.
Well, you're replacing the sentence that's in 6 with what's now.
Exactly, yeah.
You have a question about what your work called, do we need bylaws? Is that something we need to?
I mean, in the past, what we've essentially done is if we hear something that we shouldn't be hearing, we just cut it off.
Right.
Because of that exact reason. Either we have no enforcement, you know, we don't want to be unduly prejudiced, whatever the case may be. So I don't think having it or not having it stops me from dealing with it when it comes before us. It's certainly, I think the purpose of the bylaws is not only to guide the board, but also to make it clear to everyone what the situation is.
Gotcha.
So, you know, we hear a lot of times, well, I didn't know, well, here you go, now you know that's the situation, so. I don't have a problem putting it in, but if it's not there,
Did you get the link that I wrote?
I did,
Okay,
yeah.
sure. I mean, the main thing is that, you know, we always want to make sure that if we render a decision that a applicant feels is unjust and they choose to take us to court over it, we want to make sure that, you know, that we are squeaky clean so that we have the best chance of prevailing.
Probably just want conflicts.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, you certainly don't want conflicts.
Okay, so I mean, we could say something along the lines of the board will not entertain public comments about any specific parcel of property unless on the agenda or during a public hearing at the appropriate time. We could put in the reasoning that you have, Jose, in your,
Okay.
paragraph there, if the board thinks you would want to include that as well. But I think that covers it, because again, the intention is, I don't know when you'd have a specific parcel of property on the agenda. So, you know, really public property would be the only thing I think that we want to talk about, you know, particular area. Or it would be on the agenda for public hearing. But other than that, you're not gonna entertain any comments.
Right.
You okay with that language? So with that change,
And so we have,
and we do have the language in here, nothing stops the chair from amending. Have that in here?
so we have the wording change on the time limitation. We have the comment about comments about properties. Um,
Section 6, page 7.
new, the section, yeah, the new section 6. Language. So those, three changes, need a motion to approve our bylaws. Make a motion to approve the bylaws as amended.
Second.
Motion made, second, any further discussion? And all in favor? Aye. Against? Abstentions? Okay. You don't need a roll call. No.
No, we don't.
Okay. All right. Right, we have our meeting minutes from January 22nd.
Under new business, D. Mr. Wilhelm's response is, we intelligent, but should that be written there? That's like a judgment. Or, this first page, new business, 1D. I mean, that's like a judgment. Thing. It should be just concrete what he
Well,
said.
that's what we said.
Oh,
What she's doing is, that was our comments that we made
I'm sorry.
by multiple members who stated that.
Just want to add, based upon.
Yeah.
I would say the typo should be was.
Sponsors were, but
Were.
the thing is too, that just to be, should read a little bit. Comment, it should say, full comments.
I mean, I can rephrase that, so it's,
You know what I mean, so it doesn't look like such a judgment of call.
I think we could probably just strike it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was
Yeah.
sorry that you go with the other, because everyone else's comments are.
okay, so just take out D?
Yeah.
That-
Be applied, we heard him.
Just with Jeff saying A on the next page has been, just a typo, B. Been on board.
I guess if you're gonna fix that, you can remove the 1L.
You covered so much stuff, actually.
You know.
I don't usually, it almost looks like a transcript. And that's not normally how I do it, so.
Yeah, okay.
Move.
Second, I'll second.
Any further discussion?
That's correct.
As correct. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? I apologize, guys, but we still have a lot to do, so. It's coming up on the limit. So, with that, Mr. Mayor?
Based on the folder, it says, reports to the board, it's empty, so I have nothing to report.
That's because it didn't send it.
I really don't have anything to. Keep doing fine, so.
Judy?
No, I have nothing further to add than my earlier comments about attending the farmland preservation and Mayor and I attended a meeting, future stormwater. That's it.
Any other board members have anything? Fine, have you have anything?
No, I'm good.
I do want to thank you for doing a really nice job on
Yes,
all
very
those,
nice.
very, very nice. She called me, asked if we budgeted any money for, office supplies.
That's what I was thinking, I was holding it.
You can take anything out of them that you want to take out of them, but just leave the folders with me,
There you
but.
go, saves a penny.
So,
like it.
so yeah, so,
And if you spill anything on them, you have to buy it.
There you go.
so, yes. Yeah, any motion to open the public?
Motion open to the public.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any comments? Charlie?
Just on the zoning,
Just state your name, Charlie.
Charlie Monroe, 102 Blossom Road. On the rezoning there in West Portal area, my understanding is the hot box schools will be closing up. So what can go into there? You're talking before about stores and stuff like that. I'm just thinking in the future, what's gonna happen to that school?
Again, it's the master plan, so, as of right now, it's still a school, and there's been a lot of chatter, a lot of talk. We don't own that, the Board of Ed owns that property, so it's gonna be up to them and how that's either kept within the Board of Ed, or whether it's, transferred, to the town, or whatever, that's not something that we can plan on right now, because it's not our wheelhouse at this point.
I understand, but I'm just thinking of something, we needed something in the zoning for the future, because
I
my
think that-
understanding in 2 years, maybe addition on. And then
that
I'll
could
define
probably-
the school,
That's a big piece of it, it's a decent piece of property for that area, so that, I'm sure it could be. There's a lot of ideas, I'm sure that the town, a lot of people would have, concepts, so.
We've got to have money to put up against that.
Yeah. So, maybe a conversation to be had in the, definitely in the future.
You should talk to the school board to see what their plans are.
I'm ready. Andrew,
Andrew Lappy, 3 Farrow Lane. Mr. Mayor, you had mentioned that the ordinance for overnight parking had not been initiated. Is it going to go through? The reason I ask is that if there's a situation where I need to park my boat on the street, I don't want to get ticketed overnight because I can't park it in my driveway. So if there is no ordinance, then I can essentially park in the street overnight and then keep it at my house if I needed to go out fishing first thing in the morning.
I'm gonna say maybe, as long as it's parked within whatever the state parking regulations are. Like, I think you reached out to me about cars being parked on the wrong way on the road.
Yeah, that too, yeah.
So like that falls under the Title 39 motor vehicle code, so as long as you're not in violation of Title 39, Yeah, so even our board members understand, we did the parking ordinance last year, but things like that, like when we adjust speed limits, even though they're on our roads, have to go for DOT approval. We realized that that ordinance wasn't going to achieve what we thought it was going to achieve, and we also want to look at, under Mr. Kenny's suggestion, a better way to address parking traffic. So, I'm gonna say yes, that ordinance does not have any, there's nothing that can be done with that ordinance, so that ordinance does not have any impact on you putting your load out the street at this time. We are looking at this year at some point, another parking ordinance, that may address that. And again, that's just a local ordinance. You may still have a Title 39, state issue, motor vehicle issue.
So who would be able to answer that in terms of being legal?
Yeah, I think that would be up to our state police as our enforcement at this point.
Okay, because it's on the website as a
Yeah,
active
we need
ordinance.
to take that down.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking at the screen, but you could use, if you're on, I think you're sending emails to follow up, so we can take that parking ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
I have one other
Yeah,
question.
sure.
There's a big difference from when I was sitting to hear Jose. I could hardly hear him back there because he was reading like this. Is there any chance of getting microphones in front of you, like 3 of them or something? Because when you get
There's,
a larger crowd here, it's gonna be harder to hear you.
again, there's discussions with some technology changes in here, so
Okay.
what I'm, maybe screens.
We're looking at screens. There are speakers here, but they have issues with the owl. So we have to figure that out.
Yeah, it was just hard hearing him. I'm glad I moved up here to hear.
It's this big sign here. blocking it.
Gonna need 3 people to help me put that back.
All right, anything else, any other? Yeah.
You can say the name again, or?
Yes, please, just for the.
Andrew Labby, 3 Farrelly. As far as Wi-Fi, because the cell signal in here is horrible. Just for safety purposes, God forbid we ever needed to make a phone call and don't have service. Is there any chance that there'll be a guest Wi-Fi offered to anybody? Because I mean, you put 50
Oh.
people here.
Not likely in the near future.
We just replaced the router in here. I think the challenge is that we are in court, so there's security protocols for the router that's.
Right.
We'll have to figure out a whole separate system.
It's something that's being being thought
That's-
about, but it's not an immediate something that I can commit to.
Can you say that again, sir?
I'm sorry. It's certainly something we're thinking about and we'd like to provide it, but it's not something that's in the immediate plan. But we're thinking about it. And I appreciate the fact that you mentioned it because there's been very few people that suggested that it's something that's needed. But I take it as an important suggestion when members of the public make suggestions like that. So it's something we're definitely going to think about.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And just bring up you said, we're open to figuring it out, but this is a court, so like, we do open up the community, building, the community center as a cooling and warming shelter. And we do make that Wi-Fi available. We do hand out that password to people who are in that space, when they come up as a shelter, but it's not the same security protocol because it's not associated with the court.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the other building.
All right, any other public comment? Need a motion to close? You got that? All those in favor? Aye. Against? Abstentions? Okay. All right, I'm gonna have, I need a motion to adjourn to executive session.
So moved.
Second. All right, there'll be no other business or decisions made coming out of it, and that closing.